Have you ever been at a point in your life where you feel like you're on the right road, you feel like you're trying to do the right things, but things just don't seem to be falling in place? And you might even be wondering, like, is God even around? Does God even hear? I mean, do you ever feel like you're so small in this world that God just overlooks you? When you consider things going on today, I mean, if you've been watching the news, this has been one crazy weekend, right? Just a crazy weekend. Things happening across the state, across our country, across the world. Huge events, and yet, who are we? We are a group of people meeting in Little Canby, Oregon, right? We're probably not going to be on the news tonight. There's not going to be some eventful thing. The most eventful thing that could happen today is someone trying to barbecue and they accidentally burn their eyebrows off and it ends up on Canby Now, right? Let's be honest. We seem like a pretty small town, a pretty small place, and fairly insignificant to things going on in the world. And sometimes it can seem like we are overlooked. For me, there was a time in my life where I really felt like that. As a young man, I felt called into ministry, and I tried to pursue that call at one point in time. My wife and I, with two of our daughters, Anna wasn't born yet, but with our first two daughters, they were really young, 3 and 1, and we moved to Bend, Oregon, and tried to get involved working at a church there. And we did that for a little while, and it was an awful experience. I learned at that church what not to do in ministry, okay? It was a great learning experience in a very negative way. And, we moved back to the Portland area. I was pursuing a degree at Multnomah Bible College with a major in Bible theology and a second major in pastoral ministry. And Kamala and I just felt like, okay, we were on the right path and we were headed the right direction, but just with life circumstances and things going on, I ended up at a point where I dropped out of college and had a young family, and by then we had 3 daughters, and it seemed like my hopes for ministry were just gone. I looked at it and I was working full-time at a grocery store. By the way, that grocery store has the best donuts, not only in Oregon, but in the entire nation, okay? Now you're like, where is that store? Ask the person next to you, they'll tell you. But I'm working at a grocery store. I have a very young family, and I feel called to ministry, but I cannot see how I'm going to get there whatsoever. And in my life, I felt like I was getting more anxious, depressed, despondent. I just felt insignificant. I mean, even to the point where this one year, I ended up waking up on my birthday to see that my dad was calling. And it's my birthday, and I thought, oh, Dad's calling me first thing, gonna wish me happy birthday. And I'm like, hi, Dad. And he goes, hey, son, turn on the news. We're under attack. And I was like, that's not happy birthday. And, all the stuff. My birthday is 9/11. So, I'm just like, wow, I'm a nobody. I feel insignificant. It got so bad at that time for me that I'm watching the movie The Prince of Egypt with my daughters. How many of you remember that movie? A great movie. Bring it back out, moms and dads, for your kids. The Prince of Egypt. It's an animated musical about the story of Moses. And when it gets to the part about the song, you must look at your life through heaven's eyes, I'm like, right? Because I just felt like, God, are you seeing me? Where are you? I thought we had this plan, God, and I don't know what to do. I didn't know that in just a few short months, I would be in full-time ministry. I had no clue. It was just a few months later that I got hired on as a worship pastor at a church. But at that time, I could not see what God was doing. As we look at the book of Ruth, that's what we see throughout it. What we studied last week was the story of a couple They are Jewish people from the tribe of Judah, from Bethlehem. Their names are Elimelech and Naomi. And when there is a time of drought, they turn away from the things of God and they go to Moab, a land that they're not supposed to go to as Jewish people. While they are there, they go with their two sons. Their sons' names are Mahlon and Chilion. And what do their names mean? Sick, right? Sick and tired, or sick and wasted, right? And the names have meaning. One of them is very sick, he dies. The other, wasted. What does that mean? Well, it's why when you look around this service, it might be a little light today because some of our people probably were unwise, went out, drank too much, and are wasted today. And, if there's someone that's normally here and you don't see them here today, call them up and ask them. But you look at it, that's their name, sick and wasted. They married two Moabite women, so you have this family of 6 people, 3 men, 3 women. But while they are in Moab, over a 10-year period of time, the father dies, and eventually the 2 sons die, leaving 3 widows. While they are in Moab, they have lost everything. And Naomi hears that back where she is from, her hometown, the little village of Bethlehem, which means the house of bread, that God has brought a harvest. And so she says, I'm going back to my home. I'm going back to my people. And as she leaves, one of her daughters-in-law, Orpah, stays in Moab, but the other daughter-in-law, Ruth, says to her mother-in-law, I am going with you no matter what. You're returning to Bethlehem, I am returning with you to Bethlehem. Where you go, I will go. Where you sleep, I will sleep. Your people will now be my people, and the God you worship, I'm putting aside all the gods of my people, and I will worship that God. By the time we got to the end of chapter 1, it's not like this big rejoicing time, because when they get back to Bethlehem, Naomi shows up and all of her old friends are like, oh my goodness, is that Naomi? Naomi's back. And she looks at all of them and says, my name's not Naomi anymore. From now on, call me Mara, because God has dealt very bitterly with me. And Mara means bitter. She says, my life has been so hard and God has been so unkind to me. I have nothing. So from now on, when you look at me, greet me as good morning, bitter, right? It's a downer of a chapter. You look at this woman, she really has lost everything. No husband, no sons. She's coming back from a foreign land. She has property, but it has not been worked in over 10 years, so there's no produce on it. She has nothing, but she's confused because she thinks all of this has come from God. The text doesn't say that. And where chapter 1 ends in bitterness, let's see what happens by the end of chapter 2. You pick it up at verse 1. Now Naomi had a relative of her husband's, a worthy man of the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. Love that name. Look at the person next to you and say Boaz. Last night I mentioned that I want to get a puppy and I want to name him Boaz. But that's not worthy of that name. When you see my daughters, I want my next grandson to be named Boaz, right? Timothy Boaz, all right? Verse 2. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after him in whose sight I shall find favor. And she said to her, go, my daughter. So she set out and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And she happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the clan of Elimelech. And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem. And he said to the reapers, "The Lord be with you." And they answered, "The Lord bless you." Then Boaz said to his young man who was in charge of the reapers, "Whose young woman is this?" And the servants who was in charge of the reapers answered, She is the young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab. She said, "Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves after the reapers." And so she came, and she has continued from early morning until now, except for a short rest. Let's pause there for a minute. What is happening? Well, as Naomi and Ruth have come back to Bethlehem, they have nothing. But evidently, when Ruth says, "Your God will be my God," she took it seriously. And she is learning about the things of the Lord. How do we know that? Right off the bat, she knows that within the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, that there is a law or a provision that has been set forth for people that are exactly in the condition she's in. We find it first in Leviticus chapter 19, verses 9 to 10. We read this: "When you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap your field right up to its edge, neither shall you gather the gleanings after your harvest. You shall not strip your vineyards bare, neither shall you gather the fallen grapes of your vineyard. You shall leave them for the poor and the sojourner. I am the Lord your God." Later, it's continued in Deuteronomy, where it's a little bit larger section of it, and it says that they are supposed to follow this in order to bless the orphans, the widows, and the sojourners in their land. All right? So, the orphans, the widows, what are Ruth and Naomi? Widows, and the sojourners. Naomi and Ruth are called sojourners. And in fact, when you look at Ruth, who is she? She's an immigrant from a different country. These are not her people. She is poor. She has nothing. She is a woman within this culture. Right there, she didn't have a lot of legal rights that the men had. And she is an immigrant from another country. But in an incredible act of kindness, God wrote within the law for the Israelites to provide for these people. And how did they do it? Well, within agriculture, they would go out gathering up all the produce in the field, but the produce that was dropped on the ground, they were not supposed to pick it up. They leave it for the orphans, the widows, and the sojourners. As they go along, and it describes it in Deuteronomy when they shake their olive trees. They gather whatever olives drop out, but they're not supposed to go shake it a second time. Why? So the orphans, the widows, and the sojourners could go and collect it. Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. And in fact, what a lot of scholars say is that means that there would be about 20 to 25% of their harvest that they would not collect for themselves. They would leave it for other people. Now think about that. 20 to 25%. If you own a business, can you imagine 20 to 25% of the income of your business? You say, this is not for me, this is for others. Now, what this law did is twofold. Catch this. It helps God's people learn a great lesson. If God has given you plenty, give some to those who do not have plenty, right? If the Lord has blessed you, turn around and bless others. When you get something from the Lord, don't take it all for yourself. Turn around and bless somebody else in need. That's why God gives us these things. And I've seen that in big ways and small ways. In our culture, we tend to applaud certain people that are known as philanthropists. And they give what would seem to us just massive amounts. But they're billionaires. It's literally just a drop in the bucket. They don't miss it whatsoever. It's not about how much you have and once you reach a certain amount of prosperity that you want to go for, then you start giving. No. When the Lord blesses you, turn around and bless somebody else. I mentioned how Camel and I were at a time when we lived in Bend, Oregon, trying to do ministry at a small church. We were so poor when we lived there. And yet one of the biggest blessings was other people just turning around and blessing us. Sometimes the only way we were able to put food on our tables was because somebody else would send a check in the mail. I remember one time we got a check for $100 from somebody. And they said, hey, somebody gave us a gift. And we've learned that when we're blessed, we bless somebody else. Here you go. But here's the thing. This couple was not rich by any means. They too were considered poor. When the Lord blesses you, don't keep it all for yourself. Bless the people God has put in your life. There's a second part of this lesson, though. If you are in need, go out and work. Notice this, the law does not stay, and we do not see in the book of Ruth, where we see it played out, that the harvesters were told, all right, when you drop stuff, leave it on the ground, but at the end of your shift, go up, package it, and then go take it to the people who are in need. It doesn't say when you shake the olive tree once, the olives that come out, you get to keep those, but then go back and it's now your responsibility to shake it a second time. And the rest of the olives that come out, now you go ahead and package that up and take it to somebody. That's not what it says. It is the responsibility of those who are in need to do what? Work. To work. In fact, that is something that's repeated to Paul's letter to the church in Thessalonica. In that church, there were people that were thinking oh, the Lord's going to come back at any time. And they used that as an excuse to not work and just get food from other people in the church. But Paul gives that church a command. He says, if they will not work, they will not eat. They will not eat. And I think that is so important, especially for Christians to learn. Because we look at things through a lens of kindness, mercy, love, grace, and it is the lens we should look at, but so often we are manipulated and taken advantage of by people that know how to manipulate us and take advantage. Can I just put this right out there? When you pull up to an off-ramp and there's somebody standing there with a sign and you feel your heart being pulled because it's oh, they need a meal. God's telling me to give them a meal. Most likely that's you. Most likely that's you. Believers, a lot of times we get our own feelings mixed up with what God is saying. All right? Why am I saying that? Because most of the time, those are scams. The people will not work. They stand there and scam people to get money. It is a good principle to learn. At our church, this is how we handle it. Do we help people? Yes. But our principle is typically this. We will help people one time. After that, we want to help people learn how to build a budget, learn how to build a resume. We want to help people get back on their feet so that they can work. This is incredible, and it is gracious and merciful both to the person that is in need and gracious and merciful for the person who has much. And that's what we see being played out here. And I absolutely love this. Now, I said provision, and what we're seeing here is Ruth is being provided for. Naomi is being provided for when they have nothing because of the law of God. But it's also because we are introduced in the story to this man named Boaz, right? Boaz. Notice he is called right off the bat in this chapter, Boaz, a worthy man. A worthy man. Names in the book of Ruth have meaning. What does Boaz mean? Strength, right? Boaz is strength. Isn't that awesome? I kind of hope, when I get to heaven, the Lord changes my name, that's my name. He's like, Boaz, right? That's incredible. It means strength. In fact, when you look at the temple that was built, there were 2 pillars that people passed through. And those 2 pillars were given names, and one of them was named Boaz, all right? He is a worthy man. He is a man of strength. That phrase, worthy in the Old Testament, is used typically one of 2 ways. Sometimes it's used in such a way like David's mighty men, of these great warriors who are strong. And sometimes it's used to mean a man of good character. Most likely with Boaz, it is both of those at the same time. Both of those. How do we know this? Well, one, we see the character that Boaz has. Did you catch Boaz, he's an employer, but did you see how he interacts with his employees? Did you catch this? Boaz shows up on the work site. He's there, and he gets off his donkey, right? Pulls up on his donkey and hops off it, and he says, "The Lord be with you." And what happens? All of the workers stop, turn around, and say to him, "And the Lord bless you." Does that happen in any of your work sites? Can you imagine if you walked into your office and the owner of the company is there, or your boss, and walks in on Monday morning and is like, "The Lord be with you," right? "The Lord bless you." And literally, the person at the coffee maker stops, the copy machine stops, all the phones go dead, and everybody stands up and says it back. It's sort of like this last week. I was at the food carts walking through, and all of a sudden I heard, Tim Davis. And I turned around, and one of our men's discipleship groups is there. And I waved, and I heard someone go, 1, 2, 3. And they all stood up in unison and go, "Oh, Captain, my Captain," right? Really odd, really embarrassing. But yet that's how Boaz's men treat him. This is highly abnormal. He is a man of strength, a man of worth, and he even looks at this and he sees Ruth working. He knows his employees to the point where he's like, "Hey, there's somebody new out here." But notice his question: whose woman is this, right? Now, I said that within the story we might see passion, and it's interesting because the word love is only used one time in the book of Ruth, and it's a love between Naomi and Ruth. But I do think you see some stuff happening within this thing between Boaz and Ruth. He looks at her, she's working out there. There's this Moabite woman, he knows she's a foreigner, and he's like, "Who is this woman?" Right? I bet he remembered that his entire life. Man, do you remember the first time you saw your wife? Do you remember that? Hang on to that. In fact, here's a test. Wives, go home and ask your men, when was the first time you saw me and what was your reaction? Just put them to the test today. I can tell you for me, we were young and we met in choir. We knew of each other, but the first time I met Kamala was in choir. Why? I got moved in my seat to sit next to her because she was talking so much that the director was like, "Hey, Davis, go sit next to her and don't talk to her. Make sure she's quiet," right? And I'm like, "Okay." And you know what she did the rest of that class? She talked, right? But it was funny. And I realized when I was sitting there, "Hey, who's this girl?" She's smiling. She's laughing at every single thing I say. This is great. right? In fact, if you listen to our live services on YouTube, you can hear her laughing. Like when I say almost anything in my sermons, I'm like, this is great, right? But you look at it, and I remember that. I remember having this conversation, and I remember the conversation, our first conversation with her, it ended with her looking at me. She smiled at something funny I said, and she goes, "You're awesome." I was awesome, right? I'm like, I'm awesome? I made such a good joke that I filled her with awe, right? And it like just struck something in me to the point where like I was walking away, and when she said, "You're awesome," literally, you can ask her, I jumped in the air and clicked my heels together, right? And I was like, "I'm awesome." I literally repeated it back, right? First time. You see this, something starting to be stirred up with Boaz, where he starts to investigate, who is this woman? It goes on with this in verse 8. Then Boaz said to Ruth, "Now listen, my daughter, do not go to glean in another field or leave this one, but keep close to my young women. Let your eyes be on the field that they are reaping, and go after them. Have I not charged the young men not to touch you? And when you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink what the young men have drawn." Then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, "Why have I found favor in your eyes, that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner?" But Boaz answered her, "All that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me. And you have left your father and mother and your native land and came to a people that you did not know before. The Lord repay you for what you have done, and a full reward be given to you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wing you have come to take refuge." Then she said, "I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, for you have comforted me and spoken kindly to your servant, though I am not one of your servants." And at mealtime, Boaz said to her, "Come here and eat some bread and dip your morsel in the wine." So she sat beside the reapers, and he passed to her roasted grain. And she ate until she was satisfied, and she had some left over. When she rose to glean, Boaz instructed his young men, saying, "Let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not reproach her. And also pull out some from the bundles for her, and leave it for her to glean, and do not rebuke her." This is total grace that is happening. She even recognizes it as Boaz is saying, "Hey, don't stay back there at the end of all this." After all, we know from the first chapter, this is taking place during the time of Judges, where there was no king in the land and everybody did whatever they pleased. When you read the book of Judges, you realize it is just a chaotic outlaw land. And Boaz is saying, first of all, to his men, none of you better talk to her or touch her. Do not touch her. It seems a little bit harsh, right? Don't touch her. Some of you women might be like, "Man, Boaz, that's just pretty blunt." But for us men, we're like, we get it. Why do we get it? Because we know we're pigs, right? And Boaz is just telling his men, like, stay away from her. Don't even get close. And I think that is one of those things just to recognize. There are times to be able to put up boundaries that way. I have 3 daughters. And there were many times in my life where I had to tell my daughters, their boyfriends, "Hey, you better watch out." It would typically go like this. I would meet a young man, and I would end up getting to know him a little bit and say, "Hey, so you're taking my daughter out tonight?" And he would be like, "Oh, yeah, okay, where are you going? What time are you going to be back?" And I would then say, "Hey, do you have any hobbies?" And I would find out what their hobbies were. One young man was like, "I'm a gamer. I love playing video games." I'm like, "Okay, just so you know, if you touch my daughter in any way, shape, or form, I'm going to break your thumbs and you will never play video games again." All right? I had another young man who he ran track. And I told him, I will take a T-ball bat, I will break both of your knees. And he laughed, and then I looked at him and he stopped laughing. There was one young man who was really cocky, and my threats weren't working. So I had a friend of mine, a sergeant at the Canby Police Department, come to one of our services in uniform. He stood by me, and every time the young man looked at me, my buddy would start tapping his sidearm, right? And I'm just telling you, dads, if you have daughters, be that way. Moms, let the dads be that way. They're protecting your little girls. You look at it, and this is Boaz. He's giving her protection. Men, don't touch her. Ruth, come up here where it's safer. And he's giving her even extra provision. It's not just what she's gleaning, but he's telling his men, hey, go ahead and give her some extra. And he even invites her up to eat with them. Here's some wine, dip your bread in it. Here's some roasted barley. This is like the good stuff. Come and eat with us and join in this. Guys, Boaz is a man of character, okay? Men, Boaz is a man of character. The type of man who's described in the Bible over and over again as the type of man we can be in Christ. Psalm 112 is a section that talks about it. Verses 1-9, it says this, praise the Lord. Blessed is the man who fears the Lord, who greatly delights in his commandments. His offspring will be mighty in the land. The generation of the upright will be blessed. Wealth and riches are in his house, and his righteousness endures, how long? Forever. Light dawns in the darkness for the upright. He is gracious, merciful, and righteous. It is well with the man who deals generously and lends, who conducts his affairs with justice. For the righteous will never be moved. He will be remembered forever. He is not afraid of bad news. His heart is firm, trusting in the Lord. His heart is steady. He will not be afraid until he looks in triumph on his adversaries. He has distributed freely. He has given to the poor. His righteousness endures forever. His horn is exalted in honor. Now, this is not only a description of Jesus Christ, but it's a description of godly men of character. And isn't it interesting? It says their name will go on forever. We're reading about Boaz from little tiny Bethlehem that was like 3,000 years ago. A man of character that had an impact in his time, in his place, in his community. But little did he know, did Ruth know, did Naomi know, that God was orchestrating all of this in his providence to be a blessing for all mankind. The story goes on, and let's finish it out with the last few verses. Verse 17. So Ruth gleaned in the field until evening. Then she beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. And she took it up and went into the city. Her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. She also brought out and gave her what food she had left over after being satisfied. And her mother-in-law said to her, "Where did you glean today? And where have you worked? Blessed be the man who took notice of you." So she told her mother-in-law in whom she had worked and said, "The man's name with whom I work today is Boaz." And Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "May he be blessed by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead." And Naomi also said to her, "The man is a close relative of ours, one of our redeemers." And Ruth the Moabite said, "Besides, he said to me, 'You shall keep close by my young men until they have finished all my harvest.'" And Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It is good, my daughter, that you go out with his young women, lest in another field you be assaulted." So she kept close to the young women of Boaz, gleaning until the end of the barley and wheat harvests. And she lived with her mother-in-law. The first chapter ends in bitterness, and the second chapter ends in praise. You have all these different themes going on there. Wow, that was kind of cool. I felt like there was angels coming from heaven there for a second. Such a holy moment. It ends in praise. And I think it's so important for us to understand this. What we're seeing in this book is not the mighty miracles of God. No seas have been parted. No one's been brought back from the dead. No one's walked in water. No one's been miraculously healed. What we see is God working out his plan in very simple ways among simple people to bring glory to his name and to bless those who are called by his name. The turning point has begun, and they're experiencing the divine providence of God, his plan, his purposes. And with that, I just want to end with this encouragement today, whatever you want. Verse 12 of the chapter we read has a statement that's really important. It says this: "The Lord repay you for what you have done. A full reward be given to you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." When you take refuge under the wings of the Lord, you are in his providence, and there are blessings that will come. That's something that's mentioned several times in the Old Testament, but we also see a perfect picture of the providence of God with those who take refuge where? Under his wings. Where is it found? It's found in multiple Gospels, but one such place is in Luke chapter 8. It's a story of a woman who was an outcast just like Ruth was. She was not allowed to enter into the worship of God in the temple courts, and she wasn't allowed to be in the synagogues. Why? Because she had a bleeding condition and was considered unclean. And yet she heard that Christ, the Messiah, Jesus, was passing by. And she said to herself, if I can just reach out and grab the edge of his cloak, he will provide for me. The edge of that cloak, according to Jewish tradition, they called it a wing. And in the Old Testament, it said of the Messiah that there would be healing in his wings. She read passages and took them at face value by faith. If I can just get to his wing, he will provide. I will be healed. And on that day, it happened, and he looked at her and said, your faith has made you whole. She believed and trusted in the word of God. Amen. Simple action, mighty reaction. Brothers and sisters, wherever you are today, look up, look forward. You don't need to be bitter like Naomi. You don't need to be bitter like Naomi. Look to the Lord. Hebrews chapter 12 starts with this. And I'm going to invite the worship team up as I read this one last verse. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely. And let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God.